Hello and welcome to Dynamic Dropdowns. I named this bonus because it's not really an intermediate skill. It's a little more advanced on how to actually create it, but it's so often asked for or how to do. I figured I'd share it here since we already spoke on dropdowns. So we already looked at dropdowns in this previous one about how to, use a range from someplace else, which in this case was employee data's. And so I use the same thing here, and I'm just going to go ahead and look at it. And this is a dropdown by a range with the employee ID data. Now, this one in this example is not sorted, so it's not in A to Z order. Look at the previous video if you want to know how to do that and have its own separate. I'm fine with doing it there. The next thing is to add people. Now, if we look at the data here, there's a lot of different people, and what the goal is we want all of the unique names based off of the department they're in. So in this, to make a dynamic dropdown, if we say human resources, we want it to list all of the people in human resources. So in order to do this, you need to create data for this dropdown. Essentially, every single row has to have their own formula created to pull that unique information based off of what's in this cell. So to start off with this, I'm just going to delete this and get this one started. Just like what we did in this first dropdowns, we just need to have the unique, or just make dropdowns based off of what's in the department. And so I'm just copying this. I'm pulling this down while holding Shift and then Command Enter. And so now all of these have different dropdowns with the identical departments. So now it's time to get the dynamic dropdown data set for this. So to begin, let's go into here. And I already have what you need here. So if you want to just remove the apostrophe and then pull this one down, you can do that. But I'm just going to go ahead and walk through what we're doing. But again, if you're just like, I just want this, you can just remove that and you're set. So removing this, what you need to do is you need to reference the cell in the dynamic dropdowns where you want them to be. And what I did is I used these to make an array of essentially everything in B. So what this does is instead of having to pull it all the way down, it just references everything in B. Note with this, if you do have more than 1,000 rows, you'd have to expand this. But notice here, we get human resources, we get customer service. Oops, I did not delete that. Developer, I'm just gonna make sure I delete all of these. There we go. And those all should be in the same place. Let's see, so human resource 3, human resources 3, perfect. Now, just as an FYI, it doesn't have to be the exact same row. Just for me, it makes it a lot easier if everything is essentially the same place. You don't have to, you could start this all the way up at the top, but really it just kind of makes sense to have it in the same row so you know, okay, row 3 here is the same as row 3 here. So we have this first part done. So now anytime that a dropdown is here, and we can add like technology, it's going to show up here. The next thing we have to do is we have to list the employees. So this will be done with the filter function. So I'm just going to delete all this to start it from scratch. First, let's do filter and the range that we want to filter. So we want to have employee data, and in this dropdown should be, well, the names. So we want C. You could put it at C here, but we're going to pick that name as well. So I'm just going to come up here and put a 2. And then that means we're not going to get the name at the very top. It's just going to be everything else. Now we're on the condition. So in order to do this, you need to show the condition. It's a true or false. And so what the true or false is going to be is we want it to equal what's in this row. And again, I'm just going to switch it to 2. Honestly, you don't need to do that. I forgot with this. Here, I'll just go ahead and make it the same as what I did before. Unless you have a drop-down that has the department's never going to be, so we're never going to get that. So anyway, could just be this. You could put it on the 2 as well. Either way, doesn't matter. So we want it to be in this department. Oops. And then you want it to be equal to, and then let's go back to that drop-down data. We want it to equal what's in B3. So basically, it's going to say, take the employee data in CC, which is take the name, if the department matches whatever is in this row. Now we have all of these names. Just to double check to make sure this works, all of these names should be in that human resources. So I'm just going to pull like Lucy, and then I'm going to remember Daniel Sparks, let's say. So I'm doing Command F, pasting that in. That is human resources. And then the other one I just remembered is Daniel Sparks, also human resources. So that's showing that it is working. Now, if I did this and pulled it down, we're just going to get reference errors because it can't expand because it's going to overwrite stuff in other places. Whoops, undo. There we go. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is add something called Transpose. And what Transpose does is it switches the rows to columns to the other way. So if it's a row, goes to column. If it's all columns, it's going to be to rows. Then I'm just going to put that parentheses there, push enter, and there we go. Now we have all of the names of human resources. If you pull this down, you can see these ones are blank, and then these ones are there. So I'm just going to copy this now. I'm going to hold Shift, Command down all the way, and then Command return or enter, and that basically pulls that all the way down. So as we go through, it's going to show the names. Now again, you can see here the names switched for developers, same for technology, and then customer service. So if you were using this for a business, I would definitely check the names, make sure things seem to be working. In this case, since they're all different, it's kind of telling me it is. So now we have the data set up. The next thing we need to do is we need to add a new data validation rule. So we want a drop-down from a range. We want to select the range here, and we want it to start here, and we want it to go all the way. Now, you could stop it here if you know this is the longest department, but there might be some more data to account for, like if there's a bigger department. So, you can go all the way here, or if you know it's going to be even further, go as far as you can. Then I'm just going to put this at 1,000 because that's the end of it. I'm going to go ahead and lock in the rows, or excuse me, the columns, but I'm not going to lock in the rows. Sometimes when you do that, it'll automatically lock it in, and so just be careful and make sure that it doesn't. So now that you're here, you can see that this starts with Jeff, and I'm just going to Command left. Jeff is here. For developer, we want to look and we want to see a Cameron. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of pull this down. Here it should be Cameron. There we go. And then here we start with Jeff and we go down. So technology, Ricky, customer service, Winston. So I'm just looking over here, and those all line up with the first name. So again, it's always good to double check what's there. I'm just going to copy that, bring it all the way down, and Command up, 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 up until I get to the top. There we go. Now, if I switch it, this front, there we go. So it'll say invalid, and then there's Ricky, because then this name is no longer with technology. So human resources starts with Jeff. If I go to manager, where does that start? Manager, Nancy. And so as you go through and you switch these, you might come up with some errors, because this one is matching the director. But if you switch it again, then you'll get this invalid. It'll have to be in that specific range because it was switched, and then now there's a new person. So essentially this is dropdowns. Now you can do it with a lot more things. You could do it with, I don't know, food, and have produce and then different produce, meats, different types of meats, and so on. And in this example, we just had it with the employee ID data. Now, the biggest thing to note with this, because your data might not look exactly like this, so it might not work with how you're using it, the biggest thing that you need to know is that your dynamic dropdowns has to have it in rows. You're not able to make it if it's like, you know, a department's here and all the way down, and then another department and all the names and so on. It has to be with rows for the dynamic dropdown to work, or to work without like scripts or other technical things. So in this case, just make sure you're doing that. But here, now you have dynamic dropdowns. Here, it'll show whatever is on the first one, and then when you switch it, it'll switch with it. And then the ones that don't have it will be blanks. So sometimes when you have it and have a bunch of it, it'll take a little bit of time for it to load. But again, now you have dynamic dropdowns, and you're able to assign to a specific department, person, and then you can, you know, give a task, you know, check in with client, due date, today. Anyway, hopefully this is helpful. Takes a bit. I know it's a little more advanced. If you're, again, just kind of going through the series and it's not making sense, it's not going to be something on, you know, more of the challenge stuff. This is, again, just a bonus that made sense to me to add with the dropdown, since we already looked at dropdowns. So thank you again for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Bye now.